Hi everyone, Lauren here today. Kristen is really sick, so I'm going to be doing the intro to this week's podcast by myself. And I am really excited for you guys to hear this episode. It's a really impactful episode where we interview Christian Countzler, who is the CEO and co founder of Stable Recovery. Stable Recovery is a program based in Lexington, Kentucky, where their mission is to provide a safe and stable living environment for men in early recovery. They have a peer driven therapeutic community with a focus on equine related employment opportunities. They're very based in the thoroughbred industry. They have some great partners that help these men have a career. And as you'll hear Christian talk about, that the influence of the thoroughbred industry really helps give these men a purpose. And the program is very stringent and helps these men find their life again. So I just want to give everyone a little bit of a trigger warning that there are a lot of conversations in this podcast regarding addiction, recovery. So if that's not a topic that you want to listen to, just want to give you a heads up that that is what is the subject of this topic. Of this podcast. So this might not be the best one for you if that's not a subject that you want to listen to. So everyone enjoy the podcast, and we're excited for you to hear. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Arbor podcast. Christian, I'll just have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and stable recovery.
My name is Christian Countzler. I am the CEO and co-founder of Stable Recovery. We got started in June of 22, so almost 3 years that we've been going now. I am a person in recovery. I struggled with addiction and alcoholism for the majority of my adult life. I ended up here in Lexington, Kentucky, in a long-term program that I uh, ultimately got sober in. I had been a soldier and a coal miner my entire life. So when it came time for me to graduate that program, I didn't know really what I was going to do with my life. I was 39 years old and had a lot of fear about that. And
Can I ask
somehow,
real
some way
so
was
were you raised in Kentucky?
I was in Western Kentucky,
Okay.
Muhlenberg County actually. So yeah, Kentucky bred, but
Got it.
not Lexington or anything like. This is the big city compared to where I grew up. I'm from a small town.
Okay.
But I ended up here in Lexington and took a position at the facility that I got sober at, which is where I was kind of introduced to working in recovery. And I fell in love with it. It was just something that kind of came naturally to me. I ended up going back to school and kind of working my way up in that organization. Became a case manager and then ultimately the vice president of that organization, where I came in contact with some horse folks, here in Lexington, that had family members that needed some help. And I had kind of established myself as when they're hopeless, send them to this guy,
Hmm.
and had found some success with that. And so one of those guys was Frank Taylor of Taylor Made Farm, and he started talking about this idea for a school of horsemanship, where he wanted to actually bring guys out to his farm and train them to be horsemen, and give them jobs. And so we started that program while I was at this other place. But quickly, once we started the program, it didn't take long to realize how different and special this opportunity for people early in recovery could be. And so I started dreaming about building a housing program around the School of Horsemanship. And in June of 2022, I borrowed $15,000 from Frank to open up our first house. And we were hoping like five or six guys would actually want to participate and go through the program. And it grew really quickly. We filled that house up within a couple of months. Ended up getting our second house on Taylor Made Farm by the end of that year. And now, we're up to 4 houses and 47 men, and we're getting ready to open a new house at Keeneland, which is an unbelievable opportunity
That's
to,
amazing.
to be able to partner with Keeneland and offer a different sort of maintenance track. But what we're doing is it's special and it works, and it's just a unique opportunity for people. For me, when I was trying my many failed attempts at getting sober, uh, a, a large part of the difficulty was the job I had to get, and it was like an entry level position. A lot of guys are made to flip burgers or work at a factory for $9 an hour. Myself, I worked at a car wash, and it was really really hard to stay sober like that.
Right.
So when I started working in recovery, finding these second chance opportunities, employment opportunities for men that had some meaning and some purpose was kind of my mission. And lo and behold, walked Frank Taylor into my office one day and with this opportunity. And, uh, it's been absolutely incredible the amount of support we've gotten from the horse industry, the jobs that provide the purpose and the meaning, and it makes our job at Stable Recovery, the recovery side of things, a lot easier because these guys can feel pretty good about what they're waking up every day to do.
Yeah, and can you talk a little about, because like I worked in the racing industry, and I think the interesting thing about racing is that, it's 6 days a week, sometimes seven. The hours are early and they're long, depending on, if you're working in breeding, if you're working actually on the track. And you're responsible for these horses who are looking for you to take care of them as well. Can you kind of discuss the living accommodations? Because since the jobs are so full on, that that atmosphere of always being with kind of like a group of people, I assume that helps form a bond and helps everyone kind of keep in check if you're with people who are working towards the same goal and you're working to help horses. I assume that goes hand in hand with the responsibility of the animal.
It does. It is a hard job.
Hmm.
You have to absolutely love the horse to want to stay in the horse industry. People don't do it for the money because there's a very small percentage of people that make money in the horse industry, and most of us are grinding to get by when
100%.
it comes to this industry. But the difference. One of the differences in Stable Recovery is we live together, work together, and recover together. So we call it a brotherhood, and we look out for one another, and we push each other when we notice somebody's kind of down or whatnot. These guys are encouraged to ask questions and push him to overcome and do those sort of things. We're what's known as a peer driven therapeutic community. So uh, the guys the guys kind of set the rules and stuff like that. So life is hard, period, for anybody, whether you're in the horse industry or not in the horse industry or whatever. Life is exceptionally hard when you're trying to overcome addiction and stay sober. Not that it's but it's difficult to stay sober in general, and so life is always going to throw a set of circumstances at you that you may not agree with. That for people that are in recovery, we're not allowed to hit the F it button and just go out there and have a drink or use, because when we make a bad choice, some really bad consequences are going to come from that, up to death.
Right.
For me, it was incarceration and homelessness. It started with losing my wife and my kids and my job and stuff like that. But these were just small. These were bad choices. So we're trying to. This is a family atmosphere. A lot of these guys don't have any family at all, and so we quickly become their family. The most important person in our program is the guy that just got here, and everybody in this program knows that. And so, what's great is a guy will show up and he won't have anything, maybe a bag full of clothes. By the end of the day, he has work boots and pants and food and this and that, and that's all the men just wanting to help this guy feel comfortable. Because with that, this is a super difficult program. We are probably the most difficult program around when it comes to discipline and structure.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we don't tolerate anything but your best daily, and that's on purpose because uh, I tell the guys all the time, if you wake up every single day and you put every bit of effort you have into whatever it is you want to accomplish, when you lay down at the end of the day, nobody can take that from you. You have done your best. So that's really, really important for these guys. And so we watch very closely for effort and action. And if they're putting effort and action into improving themselves, then they're winning that day.
That
That's
is
amazing.
that is amazing. And so I do want to ask, so you go through your own recovery program, and I feel like in today's society, it's so easy to being like, I accomplished it, I did it, I'm done. What was your reasoning to being like, no, I want other people to experience a healthy life. I know I can help these people. What was kind of like that motivating empathy that I see that you have towards people who are struggling? What was your why of wanting to help other people?
Well, I mean that's a pretty easy question to answer. And we're a 12-step based program, and the 12 steps are what how I got sober. And you are taught to give that back to somebody else to maintain your own sobriety. So I was blessed with some incredible people in my life early in my recovery that kind of showed me the way, for lack of a better words, and that was a big part of continuing my sobriety, was to be able to give that away to somebody else. And that's not why I got into working in recovery. It I have no idea how I ended up working in recovery, to be honest. It just was, I guess, meant to be. But so it's a big part of my program is to be able to talk with other alcoholics, my lived experience, and how I overcame some things so that they can go on to pass that on to somebody else. And that's kind of steeped in the 12 steps and stuff like that. So the why was very, very easy, and it was here in Kentucky, we compete to be the worst when it comes to addiction, poverty,
Yeah.
and all those sort of things. You don't have to go very far to find someone who has a need, unfortunately, in this state, and I grew up here, and I came from an addicted family. And I know lots of other people that have either lost someone to addiction, or there's been a certain set of consequences that have caused some discomfort in their life. And so, I somehow ended up with this incredible job where I literally, all I have to do is wake up and try to find a way to help somebody.
Yeah.
And that is an incredible gift. And that is not lost on me. I am super grateful for that opportunity, to wake up every day and just try to be helpful to other people. Um, and so it's I love what I do, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Again, I have no idea how I ended up here, but for a guy like me who had no family, and when I got to Lexington, I literally had a backpack full of dirty clothes, and nobody would pick up the phone. I had been homeless for 3 years, and I mean homeless, living in a homeless camp, begging and stealing for food, to where fast forward 8 years, 7 years, and my life is incredible. And beside my job, I have this incredible family around me now. I have these incredible friends, and my life is worth living. And so that's what we're trying to teach here at Stable Recovery, is we have to build a life that is not worth losing, right? So
Right.
that's really, really important. The message that we try to get across to these guys. It's not about getting sober. Getting sober is easy. You can do that in the back of a cop car. You can do that in a hospital bed. You can do that in a treatment center. The hard part is learning how to stay sober. So we're not trying to get people sober. We're trying to teach them how to stay sober. And because with that, you can build a life with some success in it, and that will ultimately become not worth losing one of these days. And that's how you stay sober, in my opinion.
I mean, I think that's obviously incredible, and your story is incredible. Um, is it? It's sort of a two-part question, and Lauren is the horse racing. Anything I know from horse racing, I know via Lauren, not because of my own experience. But she's opened a world to me, and for the past, I don't know, you worked in it professionally for about a
For about
decade,
10
and you
years,
went to
yeah.
University of Kentucky. So through that, I've got to see it and learn about it, and something I didn't know much about. But I know you discussed you guys are on a phase program. So for the sobriety piece, there's the 12-step program, and then this phase program that I assume is more of the professional aspect, or I'm not exactly sure, but if you could explain that a little bit. And is there a part of, I find it so interesting that there's so much, these men are building lives worth living, right? That this is a life I don't want to say goodbye to. I can't, that it's worth it. And it's in an industry that has historically had this perception or persona of like gambling, drinking, and all the bit. I think that's an even more powerful piece and story of like, no, we're taking something that maybe has this perception, and it's not all that. It's not just that. And obviously,
Right.
the horse is a huge piece of that. And I don't know if you could speak a little bit to the phase, and then how you are in this world that does also maybe have those temptations or aspects.
Sure, that's a great question. And to speak about the phases, it's simple, really. We have three. It's red, yellow, and green. And what that basically means is while you're on red phase, you basically are told when to wake up, when to go to bed, where to be, all of it. It's very restrictive in the first phase of it, and that's because that's the most dangerous time for someone that's early in recovery. That our head is still full of some bad stuff, which makes it very easy to make bad decisions. And we slowly step you down as far as restrictions are concerned and stuff like that. I don't allow a cell phone for the first 90 days here. And that, in and of itself, is unlike any other program around. Like, that is a huge thing for someone to give up. But I need you to give that up if you're truly sincere about becoming sober, right? Because a cell phone can be super dangerous for somebody early in recovery,
Yeah.
for an assortment of different reasons. So the yellow and green phases are just step downs, and that's what we've been doing all day today is we evaluate our men, every single man, every single Monday about what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and what they need to do different. And then we offer those suggestions to help kind of move them along in the program. So we have a resident advisory council that meets, and so if you apply to be yellow phase, that I'm not going to make the decision on whether you have earned that. Your peers are going to make that decision because they know you better than I do, right? Uh, the big one is really the green phase because that's the majority of your time that you're going to spend here at Stable Recovery is on green phase. The restrictions are loosened to the point to where there's not as much accountability. Red and yellow, you have to sign every time you leave the house. You have to sign out and tell us where you're going, who you're going to be with, and stuff like that. Green, you're basically just learning how to live sober, and we're just kind of sitting back and watching. So that's uh, we're trying to give a man his life back, but in the beginning, to give him his life back, you've got to kind of shape and mold and teach these. There's four things that I wrote the program of Stable Recovery based on, and it's accountability, responsibility, discipline, and structure. If a human being can live by those four things on a daily basis, you're probably going to do some good stuff that day, right? Those are four difficult things to live your life by every single day. So when once you reach green phase, we think that you're probably starting to learn that those four things are meaningful in my life, and you've shown that you can adhere to those four things. So that's the phases. The really cool thing, it's not cool for the guys, but we can always take you back a phase if and that's one of our dire consequences. Is if a guy really starts to slip up, we're gonna move you back, and we call it refocus, and you need to start doing some other things that are more restrictive for another period of time. As far as the horse industry is concerned, I cannot tell you how incredible the support of the entire industry has been. And I don't know if it's because of the black eye that the industry kind of received. And
Right.
it's, with the gambling and with the breakdowns on the track and the maltreatment of horses. And I've been around the horse industry for a little while now. And all of that is false as far as the maltreatment and stuff like that. There are bad people everywhere that do bad
Right.
things. And for some reason, the media has picked up on these few folks that mistreat animals. And boy, they've just shined a spotlight on that. these horses, the majority of them live better than I do. And I'm not even exaggerating that. Like,
It's
they
true.
live better than I
I've had
do.
the privilege of finding that. I mean, Lauren has said the same thing for as long as she was a part of it. I mean, and she's worked from everybody from obviously Denali to Darley to all of it, and go around the world and you're like, these horses are living in the lap of luxury. Like, it is amazing the way, I mean, but they're professional athletes. They're performing like they deserve it. I'm not saying they don't, but it's incredible.
And it's
Yeah,
such a
it's
misconception.
I've often been confused at how that black eye kind of came about, and it's because we had some bad people that did some bad things and stuff like that. But when I tell you that this industry has totally supported, and you got to think about, the stigma attached to addiction. And, Lauren,
Hmm.
a lot of our horse owners and breeders, these are affluent folks
Yes.
that probably don't want to attach themselves to anything like addiction.
Mm.
But they, it's been amazing at, just the jobs. Our strategic partners, when I run down the list, are the who's who of the industry, right? From Windstar to Godolphin, Darley, Rood and Riddle, Spy Coast, Coolmore, Juddmont. These are all the biggest farms in the land, and they are all like, we trust you, we want your people, we're going to give them a shot. And that's just been incredible. And now it's created this healthy competition amongst the men, because as they progress through the school, they have these options of these incredible farms of where to go. And you talk about motivation for a guy, like, man, if I do really good, I could work at Darley, or if I do whatever, Windstar, we have a house at Windstar that houses 8 men, and they have been incredible. Those guys live on that farm. They live together, so it's basically stable recovery, but in a smaller kind of subset. We're getting the house at Keeneland in August, which is going to be kind of a maintenance track. For the guys, what we've noticed is some of these guys don't love the horse, and that makes getting up every day to take care of the horse tough. But what they're really good at is landscaping, or they're really good at heavy equipment or something like that. And Keeneland, the opportunities around that for guys that are good in other areas is incredible. So, these guys are getting to, I tell them all the time, they've basically been allowed to hit the pause button on their life, and all they have to do is get better at physically, mentally, and spiritually, and I would venture a guess that our success rate is a lot higher than anyone else around, so this is way, it's gone way beyond anything Frank and I could have ever dreamed of, and it's because of the horse industry and the support that they've shown us.
Yeah, and I think just to touch on a little bit for our listeners to understand, like the horse industry, getting a job in the horse industry, especially at those big name stables, Godolphin, Darley, Windstar, TaylorMade, all like those are not easy jobs to get. And people who work with those horses, like they want to know that they can trust you. They want to know that you have horsemanship skills. So I think that's a massive testament to you and your program that these companies, these outfits are saying like, yes, like this is something that I want to be involved in, because at the end of the day, as we talked about, it's such a misconception, and at the heart of why people do the horse industry and why I would say 98% of people are in horse racing is because they love the horse. So the
Yeah.
horse comes first, so that means whoever's working with the horse, they want to make sure that they're up to caliber. Just to kind of give everyone a little bit of a background that like it's not small potatoes, that you're at these massive farms, and it's a testament that they trust you and that you're doing a good job at
Yeah.
giving these guys a job and a purpose at these large farms.
Yeah, we're very proud of that, and very thankful, first and foremost, for them taking a chance on us, and overlooking the stigma. And what's happened is that they find out that these folks that are coming to them from recovery are the best employees they've got. They're loyal, they're grateful, they show up, they do a good job. We're kind of in a sense kind of an employee assistance program. If a guy's living with us, they can guarantee that guy's going to be at work every single
Hmm.
day. They can
Right.
guarantee, we're as far, if you hire guys off the street, a lot of these farms don't do any drug testing or anything like that. All of our guys get drug tested every single week. So it's there's a lot of very smart people in the horse industry, and they kind of saw what was going on, and they were like, wow, why not do this and take a chance on this? Because they're really not taking a chance. They've already been with us 90 days minimum before they go to these other farms. And so, we weed out the ones that for me as CEO, I have to lay down thinking, oh my God, I've got this many guys at WinStar. There's a lot that could go wrong. A lot of these guys come from tarnished backgrounds with felonies and things like that. So the opportunity for things to go wrong are absolutely there. But the vetting process that we have to get a guy to day 91 when he'll start on your farm, if he's made it that far, that guy is doggone serious about his sobriety and doggone serious about changing his life. So they know that, and it's they've obviously kind of put us on their back, and we've had tons of support from Blood Horse, TDN, all the big media spots. We just had an article in the New York Times come out, which is insane. I'm
Incredible.
doing an interview with CNN tomorrow. It's just gotten out. It's out of control right now. But I think people have seen, the difference that this animal has on human beings, and you know, the problem of addiction is not going away. What we've been doing for the past 25 years is obviously not working. And so, that when I started Stable Recovery with Frank, I wanted to change how things were being done. Because I was kind of ran through the system and failed many, many times. And so having the opportunity to change that, so these guys are becoming sons to their moms again. They're becoming dads to their kids. They're becoming, and there's this huge ripple effect. You can go to WinStar or Godolphin or Spy Coast or Rune Riddle, and you'll hear stories about the impact that one of our guys had on an existing employee. Like, hey, one of my very good friends is Will Walden. He has a racing stable. He's a trainer, and he's hired several of our guys. And so kind of how we got in with Keeneland is we had an impact on the backside, which, Lauren, you're well aware the backside is a rough place.
Yeah,
It is not a
it is.
it is not a very pretty place to be sometimes, but we bring a positive impact to wherever we're coming, because these guys are coming from, it's kind of like a phoenix rising from the ashes. They're just coming from nothing, and they're smiling. A lot of people wake up and they groan about having to work that day. I tell folks all the time, we wake 50 drug addicts up at 5 a.m. every day without a fight. That is unheard of. That is absolutely unheard of.
But you've done something
Yeah, I feel
incredible.
like what we're doing it's incredible.
Yeah, and it's but what you've really done is you've reminded them when they're in a broken place, like you're still human, you still have
That's it.
dignity, you still are a free person, and with that freedom comes responsibility. And
Yep,
even your program embodies that, right? Like whatever your faith is, I think, if you have one, you believe like God made us free people. At least as Americans, you probably
for
believe
sure.
that. And with that freedom comes responsibility. And that's what you're showing them again is like, yeah, you might have been broken. It happens. And
Do something about it.
that's what our podcast is about, is people who are like finding a place in this world or in someone's lives that's broken, and you're saying, no, we can fix it because we
That's
have the
right.
human agency and the choice to say, not only am I a free person, but because I'm free, I'm responsible to help. And like it's amazing. Now
Yeah.
you've shown these men that no, you have dignity. And now you can not only go do that, now you're multiplying it, that these men are showing other people, and it's continuing, which is just, it's absolutely
Yeah.
remarkable.
Yeah. No, it's, unfortunately, our culture here in the States is we are taught to be victims of our circumstance,
Right.
and if we stay in that and don't do anything about it, you're going to remain that way for the rest of your life. So when we get somebody, what has happened has happened. Now we got to do something about it, and that's where my big thing is maximum effort. Put effort into everything that you do. You can't feel bad about that. I don't care if you're rubbing a horse or scrubbing a toilet. Do your best at that, right?
Right.
And that's literally how I lived my life when I got to Lexington with nothing and nobody. I didn't, for some reason, I had this motivation and drive to just I just wanted to try to do something with my life. And through a lot of hard work, was able to do that, and then being able to teach other people how to do that, and that anything is absolutely possible. I never in a million years thought I would be sitting here doing a podcast with folks about, my life, and then the program that I am so fortunate to be able to run. So anything is possible, and you cannot allow the circumstances of life to bring you down. You have to do something about that. You can lay down and hide and run away from. If you do that, it is only going to prolong it, and it will never get better. So let's stop all that, and let's do something about it today.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
definitely. And could you touch on a little bit with like working with the horses, having, stable recovery obviously focused in the thoroughbred industry, that the success you see, is it, you obviously have the sides of the thoroughbred industry of the drinking, the gambling, but there is the side of the early mornings, the hard hours, and the horses. Could you kind of touch on those positive aspects as to how they kind of help your program succeed?
Yeah, and I don't think, I wish I could tell you that this was planned, but it wasn't. But those four things I talked about, the accountability, responsibility, discipline, and structure, that's exactly how a barn is run,
Mm.
with thoroughbreds. Is you have to do those four things. There's certain ways these animals rely on you for everything, and the animals we deal with are very expensive. So the owner needs to know if this horse is lame on its whatever, and stuff like that. So paying attention to those things. Medications need to be done on time. There's but it does something for self-esteem. I've had several guys talk about, being only in the barn for a few weeks, and a vet walking up to him and asking him about whatever horse he's taking care of, and how that made him feel. As far, this is a doctor coming up to him, and he genuinely wants his opinion about this horse, and that meant a lot to him, and it helped, you know, build momentum and self-esteem and all those sorts of things. So, it's, there's a lot of parallels between recovery and the horse industry. And again,
Yeah.
I wish I could have said I planned that, but it was not that way. It just turns out that that's the way it was. And the relationship between a horse and a man, which goes back thousands of years, and only in the past 150 years have we kind of gotten away from that. You got to think about it. 150 years ago, every single family had a horse,
Right.
and it was a
Right.
part of their family, and they relied upon that. But and I don't know if it's why society has kind of gone a certain way, but bringing that horse back in, and building trust in a 1,000-pound animal, and then that 1,000-pound animal building trust in you,
Hmm.
that relationship is awesome. And it's hard for me to put words on, but I tell a story all the time. I had a guy that had just done 10 years in prison, in a pretty nasty place, and he was broken, angry, all sorts of things. And within days of being in the barn, I walked in, and I could hear him laughing. And I thought, what in the world is he, and he was in the stall with a mare, and literally carrying on a conversation with this horse, while he's rubbing her. And it just, all the barriers that he had built up through 10 years of prison, within days, a horse had broken through that, and gotten to this dude's heart,
Yeah.
and it was something just super special. That guy is now a divisional manager at TaylorMade, and he was one of our first graduates. That's the other thing. I'll say this real quick. The horse industry and the opportunity to advance,
Hmm.
where a lot of these guys were felons and stuff like that, and that means a closed door. First and foremost, generally on an application, are you a felon? Well, but as far as advancement in other areas, it's hard to do. But what we've seen in the horse industry is, if you have a strong work ethic and a passion, there's opportunity to not just be a groom, but then to advance to barn foreman, and then divisional manager and stuff like that. We've had four guys that are now divisional managers. We've got others that have moved off track onto the track, and are working on the racing side. They were Will's assistant trainer. One of them is Brad Cox's assistant trainer right now. These are really, really good jobs that come with some really, really good benefits. And these guys are just a couple of years sober, and they've already been able to place themselves in positions that are life changing for themselves and their families.
That's awesome. And I think from a horse person perspective, what is that experience like when you bring someone in who's never really been around a horse, and specifically a racehorse, because that's a whole different level of energy. What is that kind of introduction program? How does that work to teach them the horsemanship skills to be around a thoroughbred?
Well, the first 30 days are critical, and that's basically safety, because it is such a dangerous situation, for them and the horse. Someone inexperienced with horsemanship skills can be dangerous for the horse. I mean, leading a horse into a stall
Mm-hmm.
can be dangerous, or into the field, or whatever. So
Absolutely.
that first 30 days is really slow, and it is. We have a training barn at TaylorMade. And so we have two School of Horsemanship coordinators that have eyes on at all times, just to make sure that these guys are getting the very basic things down, so that they don't hurt themselves, or hurt somebody, hurt one of the horses. And then after that, on day 31, if you've passed the 30-day eval, then we're going to move you out to a different barn that has a little quicker pace, a little heavier workload, and stuff like that. And then we, much like our phases in stable recovery, it's kind of phased as far as how you progress in the school and do stuff. And TaylorMade Farm is one of the most prestigious, best farms around when it comes to the thoroughbred industry. They're the largest consignor of thoroughbreds in the world, and they are kind of known for their training program.
Right.
And so these guys are being trained by the very best in the business. And so when they put that on a resume, that goes a long way. Just simply saying, "Hey, I learned how to work at TaylorMade." So that goes a long way too.
Yeah. And then, so they go through the sobriety program with you. When is the graduation in 90 days, hopefully? And then at that point, is there like a permanent job placement? Is that the trajectory of someone who enters the program?
Yeah, it's exactly it. So the first
Okay.
90 days, you're participating in a paid internship. We pay you here at Stable Recovery to do that, and that's basically just evaluations and assessments of your horsemanship to see how you're doing. And then about 2 weeks out from that 90 days, we'll get with the coordinators at the school, the barn foremans that they've worked with, and we'll ask, hey, what's this guy good at? What's he need help with? All that kind of stuff. And then we'll go to our strategic partners and ask them, who has availability. And then we'll go back to that individual and ask, hopefully have some options, say, hey, these are your options, and stuff like that. And obviously, if a guy needs a little more time in the school, we'll do that. Because the most important thing for me is recovery.
Mm-hmm.
The
Right.
horses are great, the job is great, all of that. But if he's not solid in his recovery, it doesn't matter how good of a horseman he is. He'll end up screwing that up one of these days. So we evaluate them in lots of different areas, but recovery being the most stringent, because that is the most important for folks like this, because it doesn't matter how good a life you build. If you are, willing to make one bad choice and lose all of that within hours, then what are we doing this for? So yeah, the team at TaylorMade is incredible. And they were the very first strategic partner. Frank, obviously, it's his farm, and the support they've shown us has just been, they took a big chance in bringing us out there, because we had no idea how this was going to go. I had no idea how this was going to go. So
That's how every
uh,
good idea starts, I think.
Exactly.
yeah, and it turned out that it was, we won an Eclipse Award this year. That's insane.
That's wild.
That's just
Amazing.
an insane thing. So, yeah, it's and then the opportunities that horse racing is fun, and it's exciting and all of that. So, getting to take these guys to races, and watching the Derby, and there's horses that they've come in contact with in the Derby or the Preakness or the Belmont or whatever it is, that makes it even more special. A lot of these guys are touching horses that are going to go on to do some incredible things in the game. And so that's the other just really neat aspect of this is, they might be rubbing LeBron James or Michael Jordan one of these days,
Right.
to give people a sense of, but that's,
It's
these
the
are
same
athletes, and
thing.
that's exactly what they're doing. So they take a lot of pride in what they do. And so that just helps with their recovery as well.
That's awesome. And then, could you touch on a little bit about Will Walden? Because I know he's a graduate of the program, he's a trainer. had a horse in the Oaks, and just kind of like, because I'm sure that gave a lot of light to the program once he had the horse in the Oaks.
Yeah, I think he had a TikTok that went viral, or Instagram or something, that like 11 million hits or something like that.
Mm.
Will is actually one of my best friends.
Okay.
Uh, at the other facility that I used to work at, I had Will a few times and kicked him out of there. He was not ready to get sober, and our rules are very very strict. And then we started the School of Horsemanship, and he did really well. He is incredible, his story, because he was about as hopeless a drug addict as you could possibly be. Crack and heroin were his deal. And I went through a lot of different circumstances on his journey. The last time he came to me, I made him get a job at Wendy's, because humility was an issue that he had, and so where I just talked about how that might be bad for some guys. In his case, it was something that was
What you needed.
necessary, and he'll tell you the story that he could have looked at that as something that was going to hinder, or something he didn't want to do. He woke up and went to Wendy's every day and was the best employee they had, and was proud of that, and helped other, and he had just kind of this psychic change, that the 12 steps talk about. And since then, uh, Frank actually helped him start his racing stable. It was ready made back then. They bought 10 yearlings. At like $40,000 a piece, which isn't a lot for a yearling. And they started racing them, and they sent three other guys that had gone through my program to work with Will. So it was, the entire team was people in recovery. Uh, and through that, they had enough success that Will was able to kind of branch out on his own and start his own stable. And I talked to him last night, and he's got 36 horses now, and he's training for some pretty big owners. And yeah, he blessed the broken, got third in the Oaks uh, a couple of weeks ago. And it's just again, have to kind of pinch myself at times. Like, I don't even understand how any of this even happened, because you couldn't even, nobody could have dreamed of any of this. Like, literally, we all had some crazy ideas, and some crazy passion, and we were super motivated, and that's served all of us a lot. But we're building this incredible community of men that continue to graduate and do really really well from stable recovery. And so we've got kind of this little fraternity of success stories, and it's just going to keep going. And that, for me, seeing, I'm the guy that sees them on day one when they're absolutely just torn down by life. And so for me, the gratification that I get to see these guys, Will's a dad now. He's got two kids, and he's just a few years ago, I was literally scraping him off a hotel floor with a needle in his arm and a crack pipe in his mouth, and here he is. He's completely changed his life. And, you know, um, I tell every single person that gets into this program is, don't sell yourself short. Anything is absolutely possible, but you
Yeah.
got to want it as bad as you want to breed. You've got to go out there. You got to go get it, man. This is still America that has tons of opportunity. Again, we're kind of taught to just do enough, and we don't do, just doing enough is not enough. We want you to do more and push yourself. And so that's a large portion of what we do every day, is to find ways to help a guy find that drive within him to want to be better.
Yeah. And how do these guys find you? So, is there like an application process, or how does that work?
Well, our website is where most people end up, because in the beginning it was just connections I had made through my previous job with treatment centers and jails and stuff like that. And then, TaylorMade and Stable Recovery kind of partnered up. And so people all over the world were hearing about Stable Recovery. So our website kind of became the place where everybody goes. So yeah, you can go to our website. It's stablerecovery.net. And that is, it's got all the information that you need to be able to contact. And then usually that's a phone call to our program director. And we do a vetting process over the phone, because this is not for everybody. And beyond anything, you have to have a willingness to change your life. My job as CEO is to make sure that everybody here is motivated and pushing towards the same thing, because it takes very little to upset the dynamic of a communal living situation. So
Right.
morale is a big deal. So typically, that willingness to do whatever it takes to learn how to stay sober, and then obviously work and do all those sort of things. So we'll vet you over the phone, and then that's probably a couple of phone calls, and then try to get you in. After that, it used to be very easy to do, but now we're kind of on a waiting list where sometimes it can't be immediate. Now with that, if there's a mom or somebody out there that has an emergency type case, uh, if they reach out on the website and explain that situation, we'll do anything to try to help somebody.
Mhm.
I will never turn somebody away uh, that needs our help.
That's amazing. So obviously, the next question would be the, the more houses you have, the more people you can help, the more staff, et cetera, et cetera. How can people support what you're doing?
So same thing. Our website has a donation page, and that can be obviously money, but really, we have an Amazon wish list on there, and what these guys need are personal hygiene items. We go through a lot of pillows, a lot of comforters, a lot of stuff like that.
Mhm.
Clothes, anything like that. We again, just incredible. We got a large influx of residents a couple of weeks ago, and we ran out of personal hygiene, and we put it on I think our Facebook, and within an hour, we had our entire wish list filled up, and everybody was taken care of. That's something we do. When you get here, we're going to stabilize you in every way possible. Meaning, if you need something, we're going to get it for you. We're gonna help you with that. I was a guy that showed up with nothing, and I can remember, how humiliating it was to ask a guy for a cup of coffee or sugar to put in my coffee because I couldn't afford to get, so thankfully, in Right and Stable Recovery's program, I took everything that either didn't work for me or made life very hard on me, and kind of wrote that into our program to try to eliminate those sort of barriers, so that a guy is not made to feel less than. He already feels less than enough, so we don't want you on day one to feel less than it. It can be really hard to tell somebody that you don't have any socks, so
Yeah, of course.
and we have lots of guys that come in that don't have any socks, so we immediately try to stabilize you in that sense so that you can at least feel human again,
Mm-hmm.
and that way you can start to rebuild. It's your head and your heart is what we're trying to repair here, and those things are they can be very difficult to do so. So it's an uphill battle for every single one of these guys. We just have an incredible platform and backdrop to be able to allow these guys to have a chance to do that.
And do you see it expanding into, because obviously the horse racing industry is all over the US. Given that you guys have had so much success, is it going to expand into other areas of the industry, or is Lexington going to stay the main place?
We're obviously, and Kristen, you said, the more houses we have, the more people we can help, and we want to help as many folks as we possibly can. So we will expand. We're expanding into Keeneland this year. We're starting a women's program, and that's going to be a huge deal. And then typically, what we'd like to see, we're going to see how this Keeneland thing goes, because that if that can be successful, then we're looking at, Saratoga and Belmont, and that you've got Ocala, and you've got Santa Anita and all that out west and stuff like that. And then what's really worked is our WinStar model, is the housing on the farm. These guys, everybody that lives in that house works at WinStar Farm, and so there's something about the living together, working together, and
Mhm.
recovering together. They have something, they have that commonality that they can talk about, when they get back to the house and stuff like that. Um, our schedule was very stringent, and that's on purpose. For me, the most dangerous time for me early in recovery was when my head would hit the pillow, because I would start thinking about being a victim, and all the things that I'd done and all these type things. So we literally, one benefit of the horse industry is these guys are so doggone worn out when they get home. All they want to do is go to sleep. They don't have time to think about all the damage that's been done. So that's another huge benefit of our program.
That's amazing. And thank you so much for your time. I mean, we're excited for our listeners to learn more about you and people who maybe don't know anything about the horse industry and how it's so remarkable. Like you're saying, you wish you could have planned it, but they play together so well in the sense of the horses, the industry, the requirements of the jobs, how it actually helps the process of recovering, of
That's it.
reigniting that human spark of like, no, I am a human. And in a weird way, us as humans interacting with animals makes us remember our place again and who we are. So
Absolutely.
it's a remarkable story. We can't wait for more people to learn about you, to support what you're doing, and to bring a bigger audience to horse racing, because it's like that's LeBron James and Michael Jackson kind of, I mean, and Michael
Yeah, yeah,
Jordan, like it's incredible.
it is.
So the more people who are, have a favorite horse, have a favorite,
Right.
trainer, that's better for the industry, better for the whole thing.
It is. Thank you guys very much for allowing me to come on and talk about it because it's, I get pretty excited talking about it, so it's been fun.
It's an amazing program, and we really appreciate you talking to us about it.
Yeah, thank you guys very
Thank
much.
you, Christian.
Thanks.
Thanks.